startups. I believe that people who have an entrepreneurial mindset are change makers. And I now believe firmly that it is the people with entrepreneurial minds who will make right what is not working, fill what's missing, and fix what is damaging our world. I have the good fortune to work at IE University, where I get paid to do what lights me up and excites me, and that is working directly with early stage teams of entrepreneurs and with students of all disciplines who are learning to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. As at IE University, entrepreneurship is taught in all of our academic, undergraduate, and graduate programs, not just in our business school. I manage IE Startup Accelerator and its entrepreneurship and innovation hub called Area 31. Of particular interest to this workshop today, I have organized and hosted a pitch slam almost every Thursday night for the past 5 years. At this weekly event that I host in Area 31, I invite 2 startups to pitch before a panel of investors and the public. Suffice it to say that I have seen and engaged with enough pitches firsthand to learn a thing or two about best practices in pitching. I have also been investing in startups for the past 10 years. And for the past 2, I have been an associate of Women Angels for STEAM, where I invest in women-founded startups in STEAM fields. It is no secret that when it comes to funding, women entrepreneurs are at a disadvantage. The reasons are multiple and varied. Based on studies conducted in the United States, there is strong evidence that investors unfairly favor men over women when it comes to pitches. In 2019, Crunchbase reported that female founders secured a record amount of venture capital. That record is reported to have been a mere 2.8% of total startup investment in the United States. 2.8%. Crunchbase reported in 2020, this year, that female-founded startups and startups founded by a team including at least one woman had secured 9% of US-based venture capital. These numbers are staggering, especially when you keep in mind that women represent at least 40% of all entrepreneurs in the United States. While these statistics are for the United States, the situation in Europe appears even worse. Atomico published recently that women-only teams went from receiving 2.6% of venture capital in 2016 to 0.4% in 2019, and mixed teams went from 8.4% in 2016 to 8% in 2019. Many significant initiatives and profound and wide-scale changes need to happen to change these numbers. One of them is helping women to pitch better, and this is why I'm here today. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to share with you a few of the learnings, some theories, and tips that I have developed and learned to help you improve your pitches in an effort to help you, women entrepreneurs, get funded so that you can execute and achieve the impact you are driven to make. Let's get started. First, let's make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about elevator pitches. Generally speaking, when I think of an elevator pitch, I think of a 60-second pitch, the time you might have going up or down an elevator. But for the purposes of this workshop, I want us to be clear, and I want us to expand that concept and refer to it as an investor pitch, where you would have approximately 5 minutes, give or take, to make a pitch in person or, as is so common now, virtually, with a slide deck and with some time afterwards for Q&A if the investor or audience so chooses. What's your objective? What are you trying to achieve? And who is your audience? In this regard, the answer to the first question must be extremely clear to you. You are not trying to get the investor to invest in you. Let me repeat that. The purpose of your initial investor pitch is not to get funding. Your purpose is to spark interest. You want the investor to be intrigued and to be curious enough to want to know more. Your aim should be to give the investor the minimum amount of information in the simplest way to achieve this objective. Who is your audience? You need to do your homework. Who are you meeting with? What have they invested in the past? What's the profile of the fund? If it is an event, is it an industry event? A specialized competition? You will not have to explain your machine learning-based solution, for example, the same way to a general angel investor who may or may not be well-versed in technology, as you would to a panel at an artificial intelligence industry event. Every time you pitch, you need to begin with these two questions. Yes, every time. And no, you cannot use the same pitch deck for every pitch if the answers to these two questions are not exactly the same. After you have these two questions answered, write down the objective and the target audience's characteristics. Who are these investors? What are they looking for? Where's their experience? Use Post-its, use paper, use Trello, slides, whatever. You want to keep everything that you include in your slides aligned with the answers to these two questions. Remember, your goal is to spark interest, at least enough for investors to ask questions and schedule or be open to scheduling a follow-up meeting. As I have designed this workshop to focus on how to improve your pitch, I am assuming that at least most of you have already created pitches and delivered them and know the overall structure. To recap the basics of a pitch, there are commonly accepted slides and information that is expected to be included in an investor pitch, and they are here listed. Often, the stage at which your startup is in will dictate some of the aspects that will have more importance than others in your pitch. For example, if you are in pre-seed, one of the most important aspects could be your early validation via an MVP or prototype. But proposing what your customer acquisition costs and lifetime values are could be considered premature and may make investors doubt your credibility, because it just may be too soon to be able to gauge those factors. If you are further along, then it's likely your traction and financials would be more critical. This isn't to say, however, that you can exclude information like financial projections, even if you are at an early stage. Indeed, doing the work and showing that you know what you're talking about and demonstrating your vision and ambition many times is key. If you are at a very early stage, what could be key for investors might be that you have identified a promising market. It will be an open secret that we're dealing with a lot of assumptions. That is, after all, the dynamic of a startup. But those assumptions should be well researched and calculated and accompanied by a coherent business model, go-to-market strategy, and stellar and convincing management team to achieve them. In the coming slides, I will map out for you how I suggest a pitch is designed and executed. Then I will share with you some tips for your slides and in-person and virtual delivery, along with additional resources to consult. After speaking to many investors personally and listening to many others at conferences and roundtable events, something that I hear time and time again is that a lot of what they base their final decisions on, whether to take a bet on a startup and invest or not, is their gut instinct. Obviously, reaching that point of whether to invest or not passes through previous analysis, but the decisions, as are decisions in general, are based on logic and on feelings. It is important to understand this and to incorporate these factors into your pitch. Even if the investor is not going to make a decision during your pitch to invest or not, they are still going to make a decision whether they want to know more or not at the end of your pitch. And therefore, you must take emotion and logic into account in your pitch's strategic design and in its strategic delivery. Now I'd like to introduce to you what I personally refer to you as your pitch's balance of the investor's logical mind and emotional heart. I want to point out something that will seem obvious, but I find it helpful to remember. You are not just pitching to investors. You are pitching to human beings. They are human beings with particular skill sets and expertise, and also with personal experiences as everyday, ordinary members of society. They're consumers, parents, travelers. It is natural that we, as human beings with particular skill sets and everyday lives, have experiences that influence, for better or for worse, our opinions of proposals that are made to us. When I refer to the mind-heart balance, I am referring to the need to find a balance in your pitch between connecting to your investors' rational thought or logical thought and to your investors' emotions, feelings. As you are not likely to know about every single previous experience the investors in your audience have ever had that could make their opinion of what you're pitching make perfect sense and clear, you cannot allow your audience to think for themselves based on their experiences. Therefore, you must take the reins of their minds and their hearts and guide them through your pitch's emotional and logical journey. You must be in control. Let's begin with how you present the problem you've set out to solve for your customers. Never assume that your audience knows what you're talking about, and never assume that they have had the same experiences as what you assert your customers have had. If you do that, you run the risk of losing your audience in the first seconds of your pitch, and that is bad news. In the first stage of your pitch, your job is to lasso in your audience's emotions. Do not let them get lost in their own thoughts, memories, or feelings, where they are influenced by their past personal experiences related to whatever you're presenting to them. And do not let any of their own rational thought or logic influence their emotions. How are you going to achieve this? You will guide them to feel what you want them to feel, not what they feel based on their previous experiences or what their logical mind dictates. Let me give you a non-example of what to do. Earlier this year, I listened to a pitch as an observer. The team pitched before a panel of 3 investors. They were pitching a new solution for how to plan and book a trip. This was pre-COVID, by the way. In the first 45 seconds of the pitch, the team lost the panel. Where did they lose them? Did they leave the room? No, they lost them in their own heads. The members of the panel were comparing their experiences and contrasting their logic with what had just been shared with them on the screen and in the delivery of the pitch. The team put up a slide that indicated that the average person takes 59 days to make up their minds about a trip before they book it. Later, when the team finished its pitch, the Q&A was used up by each member of the panel, questioning the quote-unquote fact that people take 59 days to make up their minds before they book a trip. The entire pitch was lost because the assertion was so far from the reality of how the 3 members of the panel, who considered themselves everyday people, make their own travel plans. They didn't even follow the next part of the pitch because they were lost in their own thoughts about how outrageous that figure seemed to them personally. Here is a perfect example of how storytelling could be effective when you are trying to express and get your audience to feel the severity of a pain point. If it is a pain that your audience has not yet felt, or if it is a pain that they cannot relate to, or worse, not even believe, then you have failed before you have even begun. Use story to represent your target customer, to connect to your audiences, to your investors' emotions, and then to introduce them to your solution and how you have alleviated that pain. By doing this, you take your audience out of their minds and away from their own feelings. And if you do it well, you put them into your customer's shoes so that they feel what your customer feels and nothing more. Make them feel the pain and then make them feel relief when you introduce your solution. Next, when it comes to discussing the market, we move from your audience's emotions to now appeal to their logical mind, to their expertise as investors and industry experience. Open their eyes to the market. If you share a story to express your opportunity when you discuss your market, tell them how many stories like the one you told exist. Make their eyes grow wider. Help them see the multiple digits and the growth potential of the sizable market you have identified. Make the motors in their brains turn. Next, you will then move back to appealing to their emotions, but you will support your emotionally charged delivery with the foundations of their logical minds, their expertise, their industry experience. Unlike when we first began our pitch and we wanted them to turn off both their emotions and their logical minds, here we want their logical minds to be a foundation for understanding and appreciating what we are proposing. But we want to connect with them emotionally to instill trust. When you share with them your business model and what metrics you have generated and how you plan to capture your customers, you are asking them to take a leap of faith, but it is a leap of faith that is grounded in their experience of the industry. Here, you need to balance the emotional with the rational. And when you are pitching, your goal here is to demonstrate your potential and your confidence. Obviously, you are sharing information and data that is logical. I mean, we are talking about your business model, your traction, and your go-to-market strategy. But you must understand that via your delivery, you need to feel the potential through your energy and through your strategy. Here is where we as women must work on how we express and deliver our messages. Transmitting confidence is essential. There is no room in this part of the pitch for passive proposals. Assertive, affirmative statements and explanations are how messages must be framed. Here, there's no room for, I think, I believe, it's possible statements. We do not need to overinflate our projections, but we must be bold and assertive in our proposals. The other day, I was on an investor panel of women-founded startups, and one of the entrepreneurs was asked about how they were planning to scale, considering that a part of their business model still relied on human touch points for key aspects. The entrepreneur's response made me cringe because of how she expressed herself. She said, well, we are looking at a few ways that other startups are doing this in different industries, and we aren't sure yet how we will resolve it, but we're looking at options. In my opinion, this was a terrible answer. I am not proposing that you hide information or that you lie and tell investors that something has been resolved when it hasn't. But there are ways to frame an uncertain response that still inspire confidence. For example, imagine she had said instead, yes, you are correct. Currently, we are manually doing the matching of the providers with the users. This is a short-term solution, which is serving its purpose of proving that we have identified a need, which is what we have done. We have identified 2 possible solutions and will begin beta tests of those automated responses that would allow us to reach the next stage of our development, which is to scale. And we will have this implemented in the beginning of the next quarter. Now, I am quite certain that the entrepreneur who responded fully intends on beta testing the option she has on the table, and that she most likely has at least one other option up her sleeve. But the way she answered the question did not make me confident that they were close to finding a solution. And frankly, if she is not confident in her response, then how can those of us who receive the message be confident in her or her business model? Our words and how we frame our responses and the energy and tone with which we deliver them matter. And they matter a lot. Next, we need to bring them back to purely rational thought, just as we did when we discussed the market. Now we are moving away from emotion and we are talking competition. The facts are the facts. Lay it out for them. Who are the players? What's being done now? What are they not doing? And what aren't they doing well? Demonstrate your industry knowledge and your awareness. And then bring back the emotional leap of faith that the investor has to take. You will now deliver what your unique value proposition is in the face of the reality of these competitors. Be clear and have your arguments prepared to hold your ground in the Q&A if it comes up later on. Finally, we are back to the duality of your investor's logical mind and their emotional heart. Here you want to take advantage of your audience's logical mind as the foundation for them to understand what you're presenting, to spark interest in their minds as investors, and to feel a connection and curiosity to get to know you more. This last segment of the pitch culminates your strategy to spark their interest into them believing that taking a leap of faith on you could have potential. Share with them your financials. Introduce your team, briefly expressing your credentials to appease their logical minds, and then focus on your value, grit, and commitment to connect with their emotional hearts. And end with a timeline that makes it possible to see where this leap of faith could take them. Then show them your ask and what you will do with those funds. Finally, in your closing slide, we appeal to emotion one last time. Share the why behind your venture. What led you to create your venture? And then offer them the opportunity to join you on your mission to help you achieve your why. You want to end your pitch having made a logically sound and emotionally convincing pitch in which you not only identified an investment opportunity worth learning more about, but that you and your team are the ones who will persevere through the hardships of entrepreneurship to make it a reality. My suggestion about how to go about doing this is to list out the slides you want to present. Identify where and what delivery strategies you will need and use based on the logical mind, emotional heart balance to spark the investor's interest. And then first do an ordinary brain dump of all that you think that you need to include in the pitch or that you want to include in the pitch. Then go back through each slide and review each of them to see if they fit the strategic design and if they are linked directly with the pitch's objective and its target audience. Only include the need to know information to achieve that spark. All other information should be moved into backup slides so that you have more detailed slides for any questions that come up in the Q&A. You can have as many backup slides as you want, but please just remember what you have and where they are so that you don't waste your allotted time looking for a slide you cannot find. Next, map out the script, taking note of the contrast between when your goal is a logical or rational message and when your goal is an emotional connection. Your delivery of the information should take these specific goals of persuasion into consideration. If you are going to have two people make a pitch, one person should be responsible for the emotionally focused segments and the other on the logical. Choose your words carefully, not only when you are delivering the pitch, but, and most especially, when you are talking without a script and answering any questions in the Q&A. Be sure to not step out of character. It is important to remember that we as human beings are limited in our cognitive capabilities. If you are speaking to me, I am listening to you. If you speak to me and show me text, you may think that I can cognitively multitask, and I probably think I can too. However, it is scientifically proven that I cannot. If you show me slides that have a lot of information on them, and you are speaking to me and telling me additional information, chances are that I am not only receiving the information that is on the slides or that you're saying, but not both. If you are delivering a spoken pitch, use slides to reinforce messages, not to offer additional messages. Each slide that you share should have one main message that you want the investors to receive and process. If there is more than one main message you want them to take away from the slide, then you need another slide. Last week, I was in a pitch practice session for my teams in our startup accelerator. In the middle of a pitch, one team listed a QR code that they encouraged us to check out right then and there. And then they moved on to another slide. Please do not do this. You don't want to lose your investor. Remember, you are taking the investor on a journey, and you must stay in control as you want them to stay on the journey with you. If you direct them to check out your app or click on a site in the middle of your pitch, then you have just asked that investor to exit the journey, and they won't receive your message. Let's talk for a moment about slides. White space and clarity on slides is beneficial. We do not want our investors distracted by our slides, or else they might not hear what we want them to hear, and we risk losing them in their own thoughts. Nowadays, regardless of your skills or lack thereof, don't like clip art and won't get you into any copyright trouble. And as an extra bonus, Canva's CEO and co-founder is a woman entrepreneur, Melanie Perkins. Here you have 3 books by 2 amazing women. Storytelling with Data by Cole Nespaler-Knaflic is superb. In it, Cole teaches you the fundamentals of data visualization and how to communicate effectively with data. Nancy Duarte's Resonate is where she explains her Sparkline structure. I was recently introduced to Sparkline, and I think her structure combines really well with my suggestions to strategically balance and control your audience's logical mind and emotional heart. Nancy has identified a pattern in some of the most successful presentation that goes back and forth from what is to what could be. What is, what could be. Definitely check it out. And finally, Nancy's latest book, Data Story, is great for learning how to transform numbers into a narrative that serves to drive action. I didn't get into storytelling with data when it comes to your pitches, but it is a key aspect, and I highly recommend you check out these resources.